Yes, everybody, welcome back to another Talking Wolves podcast. My name is Dave Azapadi. Alongside me today, as always, we've got Mr. Jordan Russell and a new member for the Talking Wolves podcast. He's been on the channel before, but making his debut on the podcast is Gully, also known as Molyneux Musings over on the socials. Gully, thanks for joining us, man. How have you been keeping?
Yeah, nice to be here. Thank you very much. Debut. It's weird to kind of think of myself like that, new kid on the block. But I'll try and make my best impression.
Yeah, hopefully it's the first of many. I know I'd ask what you've been up to, but I know you've had a newborn not so long ago. I mean, is she keeping you busy?
She is. Obviously, it's two now for us. One's 2 and a bit, and the other's 3 months. And it's just it's chaos.
Carnage.
Anybody who's been in that position will know. But yeah, we took him to his first football training session this weekend, actually. So
Oh yeah, any good?
Yeah.
What's it called? The little kickers thing, or is it?
It's called Football Fun Factory. Actually, we were scouting him out. They've got a 3-week trial on. So project. I would have said Mateus Cunha, but I'm not going to say Project Cunha anymore. It's going to have to be Project, I don't know, Toti Gomes or
Take after his dad. Good centre back, mate. Maybe.
We'll see. I hope he's a better player than I am because
It will be interesting.
Jord will tell you anyway. Yeah.
It'll be interesting, like the next generation, because I think that's the thing now. Like a lot of people sort of our age around, you two are a little bit older than me, but that sort of age bracket that really pushing their kids to like go on to be like bigger and better things. So it'll be interesting to see like the next maybe 10, 20 years what the quality of football is, even at Sunday League level. Who knows? I don't think. Go on, Gully. Sorry.
I think it's mad how competitive it is now, but I think it's created an environment, and a lot of people who I know in grassroots football tell you where parents are just nightmares, apparently. So
that's why I had to walk away from coaching, and it was because of the parents. It literally was nothing to do with the kids. It's crazy. So just one of them. Jordan, I don't think you'll be too far behind. Maybe kids. Who knows?
Who knows, mate? Yeah, I'm running out of animals, mate, and holidays to go on. So yeah, I think I'm going to be back to the corner soon. Where it's like,
But I hope your TV carries on working. Keep yourself busy.
Literally, I need to. Yeah, I don't think it'll be too far away. To be honest with you, I'm running out of excuses. So
pretty much every game I have to say I've watched this season from home has had the babby on my chest. Like that's just what you got to do now. Like it's the only way I can get through 2 hours of peace instead of sleeping on my chest. So yeah.
I'm sure a lot of people listening and watching can relate anyway. But Jordan, how you been keeping other than that?
Yeah, good. On the weekend, as not too unusual for the listeners. Yeah, golfed on Saturday. Was out with friends on Saturday evening for food. So I watched the game around someone's house with beers and Mexican food, and the scram was elite, to be fair. Really, really good. And then Sunday, it's my mum's birthday on Thursday, and my sister's was last weekend, so we went to Hickory's. Shout out Hickory's for lunch. But I did that thing of just overindulging at like 1:30. I had the brisket, had a starter, and then I just wanted to literally the Man U Arsenal game. I just wanted to sleep, to be honest with you. But yeah, no, it was a good weekend all in all.
Yeah, I know we used to talk about Grillit being our sponsor, but I mean, Hickory's being the sponsor would be...
I've never been, but I've heard good things.
Yeah. I've not been for a while, to be fair. It's been a few years since I've been. Yeah,
to be fair, I'm quite lucky where I am, because being like Old Winford and it's Wall Heath, so it's like literally 15 minutes. It's good food. But then, the Stourbridge Grillit is literally...
I had a Grillit last night, mate. So
so it's if Grillit are still interested in sponsoring us as well, like I will make good use of that as well.
No, definitely. Before we move on to the match and obviously the main topic of the podcast, I know there will be Old Goal Pack sent me one of their new T-shirts, so I'll make sure to leave a link for that as well, because it's just supporting some great causes. It's got Out of Darkness camouflage on the back. It's a really cool design. So, lads, we'll talk about Wolves 1, Everton 1. A point on the board. I think probably more positives than negatives to take out of the game. Obviously, especially as the other two, we'll say, in Leicester and Ipswich both lost once again, although Chelsea did make quite hard work of it. Jord, we'll talk about the lineup first. It was obviously we knew there was going to be changes, and it was interesting to see how Vitor was going to set us up with the absence of Mateus Cunha. But yeah, quite a physical lineup, and I suppose when you look at that, the height and the physicality of that Everton team, it sort of made sense to start off that way.
Yeah, it's probably the 11 I'd have gone for, to be fair. And I know there was we spoke about Jigger versus Doherty in that role, and I think Doherty's played that role very, very well. So I think he's got to possibly play himself out of that role at the moment a little bit. And again, I know there's a little bit of, I know that on the social media and online, there's a lot of people question what Marshall Munetsi is and what he should be playing. But I think that actually we still haven't seen him really in his position, I would argue. And I think that looking at that Everton lineup and how, like you say, physical they are, I think they found something under Moyes a little bit with Decore playing higher up with Beto, and then, Jake O'Brien's now gone to right back. Even just from a pure set pieces perspective, we need that additional height, and I think Munetsi adds that physicality, whatever people might think of his footballing ability, to that starting 11. So for me, it was probably how I would have gone, especially with so many you've got Gwedge come back, Hwang's come back, Rodrigo Gomes all on the bench, but obviously not match fit. I thought it was the right lineup for me. And Agbadu obviously coming back and slotting in quite nicely.
Yeah, I think if, in my predicted lineup, I would have probably had the one of Rodrigo Gomes or Gedge to start, but we don't know what the fitness is like. We don't know what the sharpness is like, how intense their training's been this week. Because there were a few people when the lineup came out. So a few people I saw saying, what's Rodrigo got to do to get a game? Well, he's not played in how long, so he's not going to be sharp. And I think ultimately Gully, I know we went behind, but it was a really, with how Everton set up, it was a difficult game because they had, the height of their back line, and then you add some of the physicality. Even Beto, I didn't realise how big he was, and it was a really intriguing battle, which I think our back three dealt with him quite well. But it was probably the best way to start off until sort of we sussed out how Everton were going to play, because then obviously we made the more attacking changes towards the end of the game. Sorry.
Yeah, if you think about it in the context of what happened at their place early this season, we just got battered on balls into the box, right? And Agbadu returning, important on many levels, but one of them being the fact that he is capable of handling whatever physical specimen he's up against, right? And Beto's been in really good form recently and didn't really get a sniff. Even the chance at the end, at first glance, I thought, that's a really big opportunity for them, but I don't think it was quite as easy as it looked on second viewing. But Agbadu, just any ball that went into the channel, he was eating up and then relaxing. And as he does, I mean, the guys next to me were absolutely panicking every time he got the ball.
The composure is unbelievable, isn't it? Like, his composure is fantastic.
I think he's unbelievable. He's so cool and calm, and he's a bit wild with his passing, and he tries to go a bit Hollywood at times, but he makes such a difference having him there. You can see immediately, if we'd have had Santi Bueno in that position, a couple of those scenarios would have just been a little bit sketchier, and that kind of emanates through the team, I think, sometimes. But yeah, like you say, if you think, and I'm sure Pereira would have had the last game against Everton in his mind when he came up with the lineup. I wasn't particularly keen because I think maybe an old school way of thinking, at home you should try and take the initiative in games, and especially against a team who I still don't think player for player they're a good side. They've obviously had their kind of bump with David Moyes, and he's got them going, but they were missing Inaman and Jai. They were missing Dwight McNeil, two probably the most important attacking players for them. And I just think if you give a team an opportunity to go out, and I think the lineups come out and teams obviously sniff something when they're seeing an opposition lineup, and I thought it was a little bit negative for me. But there were reasons for it, I'm sure.
Yeah, it was interesting, Jord, because like Gully said, Wolves and Vitor could have added a little bit more, going forward. You would assume you could have maybe got 50 to 60 minutes out of Rodrigo, Gomes, Hwang or Gedge. But like Everton they had the momentum maybe first 20, 25 minutes, but even at 1-1, they seemed extremely happy with a point, the way they were taking time on set pieces and goal kicks, the way they were sat, really deep. I mean, what about you? That surprised me. I suppose for David Moyes, their season is pretty much done. The only thing they've got to fight for is maybe places in the table, so a little bit more prize money and so on. But, I was surprised at that. I thought, for them, it's a good chance to maybe, with our team that was out, a good chance for them maybe to press us and try and beat us. But I was surprised with how they set up.
Yeah, but I think Gully hit the nail on the head there a little bit as well. Like, I do actually think their starting 11, and albeit they've been on a good run of form, is very limited.
Yeah.
And I still don't think there's many players from that Everton side you look at and go, I really wish he was playing for Wolverhampton Wanderers. I just don't. I think they're very functional, and Moyes has done a great job there for them. And actually, any point away from home, really, I would say for a team in Everton's position, our position even, is a good point. And they probably just look to that. And for Moyes, it's like, it's another game we haven't lost. It's a bit of momentum.
8 unbeaten in the league for them now.
Yeah, like, it just keeps that run going on. And I mean, I think Pereira's maybe even looked at it as well from that perspective of, he could have took the game to him a little bit more, maybe from starting 11 and lineup, but especially after, and again, the team lineup would have been picked way before the Ipswich result, but after Ipswich lost, I thought it was more so important to make sure we got something out of that game to almost add that additional game when you take the goal difference in, gap buffer between the bottom three, then actually, losing it, trying to do something different. And I know there's a lot of clamours for Rodrigo Gomes, and I do think he's a good player, and I think he'll be a far more important player for us next season. But I think Vitor Pereira sees him as a wing back, and I do as well. I think in terms of how we're trying to play at the moment, I don't think he suits playing in one of these wide forward positions, inside forward positions, whatever you want to call it, because I don't want to say he's not cute enough, but I don't think that would suit his game. I think he's energetic and up and down, and I think actually he's the most natural replacement we've got right now for, I would say, when Nelson Semedo walks away in the summer, which we're all expecting. I would imagine that Rodrigo Gomes would have that slot before Pedro Lima, even, because I think, Lima's probably still got a bit of developing to do. And then, Gedge and Hwang, I think, Hwang's clearly not fit, and that's why he didn't come off the bench against Bournemouth. And then Gedge as well. I mean, again, with that physical back line, I think it's what we saw Gedge against Liverpool at Anfield, where he just got bullied by Van Dijk and Konate, and that's no disgrace at all. Yeah. But then, him going up against, again, Jake O'Brien, Branthwaite, Tarkowski, those are the sort of probably not the ideal matchup for him as well. So, I think Vitor just looked at it and thought, if we can keep ourselves in the game, if we can match them physically and maybe open up and go for it a little bit at the end, which in all fairness, we tried to win the game at the end. I think we played it pretty much to his script, I'd have said.
Yeah, I think the only thing probably missing was the winning goal. I think it's opposite to what I said. Just I know, like I said, Everton was sat quite deep. I think their expected goals was much higher than Wolves, probably because of the chance you alluded to earlier, Gully, with Beto, where Jose Sarr saved it. But I felt we were always in the game. What do you think's missing, Gully? Because we just didn't, and it's not just been the game against Everton. It's been the case for a short while now where Wolves are just, yes, they're staying in games, but I felt it against Fulham. They're just not creating enough clear-cut opportunities or not testing the goalkeeper. Do you think that's a problem with the system, or do you think it's the personnel? Because again, you've only got one recognised forward that's starting in a front three on. I suppose you say Jean-Luc Bellegarde has played out wide before, but one recognised out and out forward, playing. Do you think that's the main issue, that we're missing players, or players aren't fit enough, or we just haven't got the players in the current squad to play how Vitor wants to play?
Yeah, I think we're obviously a bit more structured, a bit more rigid anyway compared to what we were earlier this season. And I mean, I made the point quite early on when Pereira started in one of my videos that we are a bit more let Cunha be free and let him get on the ball as much as possible, and let him dictate things. He'll drop into midfield quite often and take the ball off defenders and all sorts. So with him out of the team, and I think we all thought maybe there's a bit of an opportunity here, talking about it in almost corporate speak. It's not a problem, it's an opportunity. And each player who came in could kind of step up and offer us something slightly different. But for me, obviously there's fitness permutations around this, but if you have players on the bench who can make runs in behind and offer something different, they should be starting the game. And that would cause a little bit more of an issue for Everton defenders. I think Hwang, when he came on, actually did all right in terms of trying to make some of those runs. But the way we were set up in this game specifically, every player that was in the front line is more inclined to come towards the ball. I don't know, Munetsi maybe isn't necessarily that guy. So if you're constantly coming towards the ball as opposed to running it behind, you're allowing big centre-halves to come in and just get tight. Someone like Branthwaite, he's happy covering space as well. And you haven't really got a player who's going to threaten in those channels. So, people came for Strand Larsen quite a bit this week, and I think if he'd had a bit more of a partner who could link up with, I think you'd have seen a bit more from him. But also, he didn't quite get to grips with the guys he was up against. I think there's a bit of work to do there in terms of your typical rugged Premier League centre half and how he handles them. But the Fulham game. If you want to talk about the Fulham game, the issue there is you've conceded in the first minute of the first half and the first minute of the second half. I don't think there's much more to it than that. And Agbadu coming back in as well as giving that just extra defensive security. You can play higher up the pitch. You can allow him to just go and cover whatever spaces you need to, and that helps everybody out from an attacking perspective.
Yeah, I think we'll stick on Strand Larsen actually, because people that obviously listened or watched last week's podcast will know that we sort of try to back him a little bit, because he has been a little bit of a scapegoat for Wolves. But I think we picked out, and Joe spoke about some of the stats of the percentiles, and we spoke about his qualities, which I still think even on Saturday a lot of people around me were speaking negatively of him, and there were just glimpses throughout the game where I could still see the right things. But I think, Jord, it's almost a case of him trying a little bit too hard, because yes, I think on Saturday he had another frustrating and quite poor game. He forced Pickford to make a half decent stop in the second half, but there was one little area where he played maybe in quick succession 3 or 4 first time passes, and I just said, if you calm down, actually get a touch and play with the ball a little bit more. He was just trying too hard to just move the ball quickly, which is, again, fair enough. But I think if he had a little bit more confidence in himself, he could hold that ball up, try and bring other players into play. I think, again, what you said, Gully, I do agree. I think it's not all on Jurgen Strand Larsen. I think in terms of, again, personnel or structure, he hasn't got players to play off enough. I think if he has got a partner or someone that can play a little bit closer to him, it would work a little bit better. But, George, is it that Jurgen Strand Larsen is not good enough? Is it that, just out of form, fitness? What do you make of it?
Yeah, well, watching it on Saturday, I made a bit of a joke saying, in that sort of spell that you're saying with those stray passes all in a row, I was saying the more balls are bouncing off and then Bonnie blued it. But actually, it is.
Wow.
It is a graveyard shift up top for Wolves, and I think even over years gone by, it's always seemed to be a graveyard shift. Like going back to Kevin Doyle and Stephen Fletcher and all these guys that are great footballers, but just their output from a stats perspective didn't look great because they were just doing so much dog work. And I think that's the same for Strand Larsen a little bit, really. I think the system we play, and again, we spoke about it last week, I think the system we play, you need pace in that team from back to front. You almost need people running off Strand Larsen and running behind him, and that just doesn't happen. And when you've got Bellegarde and Munetsi who started there in those sort of positions that you'd want to break past the back line, that's never going to happen because that's not their game. But even when, Sarabia, Hwang, even Cunha, I don't think goes behind defenders and makes those sort of runs. They all want it to feet and sort of try and dictate the game from that position. So I think it is a system thing when it comes to Strand Larsen. And I'm not writing him off because I do think he's a good footballer, and I think we've seen signs of it. And his output's dropped off since he's come back from his injury, and that's fair enough. But I think it might be a classic case of, I think he's a good footballer, but just not a good fit for Wolverhampton Wanderers, maybe. I think it's getting to that point now where you go, within this system and within the parameters of the team and the squad we've got around him, I don't think it's going to work. I think if we look to change that, and like I say, if we got pace and players that start looking to run behind, and again, Rodrigo Gomes could do that, but he'd be doing that from a lot deeper from a wing-back position. That we need sort of players that'll look to stretch, and we just haven't got that sort of profile in the squad, to be honest with you. So that's my concern with it. I don't think he's a bad player at all, but I do think the system's killing him.
It's a shame that Go on, Gully, sorry.
So, did you listen to the podcast he did in the week with Dave Edwards and James Bird? It's a good listen because they do get into the kind of detail with Strand Larsen about his game and stuff. And it's a bit of a paradox with him because he's 6'4". I think we all assume he's a brute and he's going to, fight off people. He's going to control everything that comes up to him, blah, blah, blah. His movement for me is the strongest part of his game. In terms of, and they talk about it in that podcast about getting an inch on defenders, all this kind of stuff. And he always likes to make this run into the channel. The one with the chance that he had against Everton, where he was tight angle, right? But the fact of the matter was, at that point in time, he had a player on the pitch who will find him as well, in Pablo Sarabia, who obviously picked that pass. In the first half, I don't think he backed anyone to necessarily find that kind of space and with that level of quality. And if football's a kind of, it's that kind of ecosystem where if you look at your teammates, you don't trust them to necessarily make a pass, you're not going to make a run, and it's vice versa, right? So that, I think you've got to kind of take that sort of stuff into context, because it's important at the end of the day. And the other thing, there wasn't really anybody else occupying the centre off to help him out. If he's 1-on-1, it's a different kettle of fish. But if he's 1-on-2 all the time, he's going to struggle.
Yeah, I think the thing that's a shame for him as well, and again, it's probably down to recruitment and how the squad is planned. We haven't got another out-and-out number 9 in this squad. He's the only one. And I think in times like this, you would probably swap them round, give him a little bit of time out of the limelight, maybe start bringing him on for the last sort of half an hour, 40 minutes of games. And I think that would probably help him with his confidence and sharpness and fitness a little bit more as well. So it's a shame. But, I mean, a lot of people, if you watch the Wolves goal, the equaliser back on Saturday, he's a massive part of why that goal happened, though. Obviously, there's good work from Ryan Aït-Nouri and Bellegarde on the left-hand side and the ball through. But the space that opens up for Marshall Manehti is only because of Jürgen Strand Larsen's run. He runs towards the left-hand side of the box. It drags the defender out, which opens up the space. And Munetzi's there to put it in the back of the net. And sometimes, Jord, things like that do go unnoticed. Again, it's one moment in the game, and it's probably a moment that they may or may not have worked on the training pitch. But, they're the little moments sometimes that can win or lose football matches. But obviously, he does have to still build on his overall game.
Yeah, but I think he won't be happy with the stats that he's got this year in on a whole. I think even earlier parts of the season where he was getting returns, I think he could have scored more and contributed more. I think he missed some decent chances. And yeah, I think that's the thing. I think it's more so like modern day football fans view football in a way of purely on stats, and you're either good or you're shit.
Yeah.
And it's no in between. It's either you're world class or you're shit, and it's all based on your output in your position. And yeah, you bang on. I think the run for that he takes away Tarkovsky. I think it's Tarkovsky or Brown. One of them anyway. It takes them away, and then Munetsi just runs in and puts in the back of the net. And those are the sort of things that actually that's an intelligent run. It's selfless run. It's selfless run. It's selfless play for the team. But then he won't get anything on the stats for an assist or a contribution. No, it doesn't show anything. And then all of a sudden you look at it again and go, well, he started again and scored, no assist. Oh, we need to get rid of him, sort of thing, or get him out, or whatever it could be. But there is always that grey area with him. There's typical stats, and there is also the eye test as well. And I think the last 2 games, I don't think he played well at Bournemouth, and I don't think he played well on Saturday, and that's the problem now. And I think players will look at social media. They will understand what people. It'll seep in, whether they say they look at it or not. They'll know what fans are perceiving of them. And I just hope it doesn't knock his confidence, because I think actually Southampton on the weekend, I know we'll get onto the game a bit later on, but that's almost a game where he will be expecting to score and almost put pressure on himself already. And I just hope he doesn't try too hard again, because it did feel like at times against Everton he was trying that a little bit too hard.
Yeah, hopefully it's just a case of, he gets himself on the score sheet, that sort of weight is off his shoulders, and then we can start to see the best of Jürgen Strand Larsen. I think it's very, very unfair to write him off after 12 months in a Wolves shirt, and I think next season onwards is the real test for him. He's had a year to adapt to the Premier League. He's had a full proper pre-season. Not that he didn't have a full pre-season, because he signed extremely early in the summer, but he's had a very crazy year. First year in England, we changed of managers. Again, a system that probably doesn't suit him quite well, but I still do think Wolves probably do need another number 9 to help him out a little bit more. We'll just touch on the Everton goal as well. Gully, there was a couple of times where I felt that Everton were quite fortunate with some of the balls that were sort of going into dangerous areas. There was once where I think a player slipped and somehow the ball found its way all the way to their left-hand side, and then there was a deflection. And I felt the goal was a ball that was quite fortunate again. I commented maybe on my match reaction, I thought maybe Semedo was just far too high because I looked back and he was sort of stood on the halfway line. I still think there's enough bodies in the area to stop the goal from happening. But I do think there's a slice of fortune with that Everton chance, to be fair, with how it made its way to Jack Harrison.
Yeah, the Semedo thing, I think, because, again, we haven't got any pace in the team, we needed to push the wing backs on to try and force the Everton backline back, and he was quite high throughout the game when Sarabia came on as well. And I know it always looks bad when a player vacates their space, but
Yeah.
there's always some sort of reasoning behind it. And Semedo's a responsible footballer. He's not being bone idle. He's not carrying out instructions. Like, we know he's understanding of the game is good quality, and he's always trying to achieve something with what he does. So the fact that we lost the ball, it always looks bad, but we have a back three for that reason as well. We're always, generally speaking, well covered in those spaces. The bottom line is, it deflected off Joao Gomes as he comes sprinting over to block, and then it takes another deflection off Toti to then go into the bottom corner. Sometimes he looks just not in, right? And Jack Harrison, bloke's not scored in over a season of Premier League football, I think. He just got had one go for him on that occasion. But yeah, it's you lose the ball, you get into a slight panic situation, and then you're just trying to recover everything. And Joao Gomes is... I actually think if Joao Gomes doesn't go to block, I think Doherty gets the blocking. And you can't tell Joao Gomes not to go and make the run because it's honest and it's good work and all that kind of stuff. But it's just one of them things that we've got to kind of just take on the chin and understand that, yeah, things like this can happen in football. It's a random sport sometimes.
Yeah. I think it was quite important that we sort of responded as well. But quickly going back to the Semedo, I did make it pretty clear on my video. I said, and I think I've done this probably the last couple of weeks to be fair to the players, because you don't know what the head coach is telling them to do. Like with Semedo, like you said, it's not because he can't be asked to run back. It's probably because, he's been asked to really attack and, like you said, try and suss out the Everton defence and, and push them back. And obviously, Jordan made the comment about Cunha when you talk about the corners last week. I said, do you not think that's maybe a instruction? And same with a lot of these players, they're not doing... 9 times out of 10, they're probably not doing things because they just can't be arsed or because they feel like they want to do something. A lot of it, there will be rhyme and reason behind it. But another one of those things, Jord, is Marshall Munetsi getting into the area. And obviously, I know we just quickly touched on that. But I think it's quite important for him to get a goal because he's missed some good opportunities. I think he'll be aware of that. A lot of fans were writing him off, and obviously he got substituted at half-time, which I'll mention and talk about in a second. But really important for him to get himself on the score sheet, wasn't it, after the last few weeks?
Yeah, and I literally don't get why people are writing him off. Still, for me, he hasn't played in his typical position that we signed him in. He's played as a false 9. He's played off the right
wing, Saturday,
or inside forward, whatever you want to call it. And he's been doing a job and a shift for the club. And I think he's what I will say. He seems a very honest player. Does a lot of dirty work for us. And I think actually, what I've said a few times is like you can't teach that. It's almost he just seems to be in the right place at the right time a lot. And once or twice you can say it's a coincidence, but actually he just seems to get on the end of things. And I know that there'll be fans that are saying, well, technically he's not that good or he doesn't really do what other players can do, but actually the makeshift of the team and the squad, I think you do need different profiles of players, and he is an outlier for me and someone within our squad that is completely unique in what he offers the team. And yeah, I don't think he's ever going to pop one in from 35 yards like Cunha does or dictate a game like Andre will. But I do think there's a place for him in this team. And I think, like you say, that goal now might give him that little bit of confidence to sort of, ease himself into it and get it going. And I think he'll be an important player for us, I do. And I think that, again, I don't think he's ever going to be one that's going to get everyone off the seats and is going to do amazing things on the ball all the time. But I do think he's a very functional footballer, and I think I do see why we'd want him around the team and the squad. And I think he'll play a lot of games for Wolves over the next few years. I really do.
Yeah, I think he's just a good squad player to have, Gully, because it's great. We've got some good midfielders, like really good holding midfielders in Andre and Joao Gomes. But with someone with the stature and height, Wolves have just seemed to have missed that over the last few seasons, really. And I think that's probably, Vitor made that pretty clear. He wants an athlete, he wants someone that can run up and down the pitch. And, now he's got somebody who, again, it will use the Dave Edwards comparison because Dave Edwards was like that. He wasn't the most attractive footballer, but seemed to always get on the end of things. With Marshall Manehti, like Jord said, if he's around next season, you wouldn't be surprised to see him on the end of sort of getting 5 or 6 goals each season.
Yeah, I'm one of those people that's kind of marked my card with Munetsi, to be totally honest, because there's a wider context to it in the sense that I think it's money spent that I believe we probably could have done with spending elsewhere.
I think it was a lot of money for him for someone of that age.
Yeah,
I do.
And it felt like late deadline. It might have been you, Dave, who talked about the fact that Vitor's been quite picky about some of the suggestions that have been made to him by the recruitment team, and obviously get late in the day with the window. I make the point. I think at this point, John Ritter Bellegarde hadn't played in central midfield, and then he played against Villa and done brilliantly. I always wondered, like, in the mind of the manager, because he said himself he wasn't sure where his best position was. Has he already made his mind up that he needs that player when Bellegarde's potentially there to fill that space as well? But he's obviously decided and he's hung his hat on Munetsi. For me, I don't think he's of the quality that for me, it's a symptom of a gradual decline in the expectations of what a good Wolves player is. Personally, I think we think about the options that we've got in our forward line at the moment. We're talking about trying to get Guedes in the team, Hwang in the team, Sarabia in the team. The drop off from what we had previously is so big, and there's obviously a question to be asked of the ownership and the recruitment team, all that sort of stuff. But if I'm asking for Marshall Munetsi to start games for Wolves, I think we've just fallen off a big star. And yes, he will do stuff and he will provide a physical presence and he might score the odd goal. But I see him as a bit of a ghost in possession in the middle of in between the two boxes. And if we're playing 3-4-3 like we do, we've got 3 forward players available to slot in. If he's taken up one of those spaces, I just think we're limiting ourselves big time because you're playing essentially 5 defenders with the wing backs. You've got 2 central midfielders who aren't necessarily, Andre and Joao Gomes, they're not prolific. They're not going to create loads of goals and stuff. Those 3 players in the forward line for me need to be forwards because you're going to hamstring yourself a little bit otherwise. My personal expectation is that he's a bit part player next season, and by the end of next season, he's gone. That's my expectation. But we'll wait and see because I think Vitor has hung his hat on him quite a bit, and he's really backing him in his press conferences and stuff as well. Yeah, but we'll see.
No, I agree, and that's why I said a squad player because I don't think he's a starter for Wolves or shouldn't be a starter. I think there's certain situations and scenarios probably where he may start games, but I always think of him as like Nuno's season when we won the championship, Alfred and Dye. He never played. He didn't start a huge amount of games. But he was always there, and a physical element of it, and running into the box quite late, it's quite difficult for defenders to handle. But I fully agree. I don't think he should, he will be a starter for Wolves next season, or at least he shouldn't be, because there should be enough quality, like you said, in those forward areas, especially if Vitor sticks around. The interesting thing, and this is why I mentioned it, he got substituted at half time. Apparently, without me reading too much into it, Vitor had said he had a slight knock and had to come off. Munetsi said he wasn't injured. It was just due to team instructions why Vitor had subbed him off. So I don't know what's happened there. So it's quite interesting that I'd seen that as well. But the player that replaced him, Jord, is Paulo Sarabia. And again, I mean, there's just been news that maybe he's going to be leaving at the end of his deal, which expires this summer to go back to Spain. But another player that divides lots of opinion. And I actually think he came on and had a positive impact on the pitch in terms of his creativity. But there were 1 or 2 comments after the game about how poor he was, which I think were jumped on quite quickly by Wolves fans, to be fair. But it's a shame. I mean, we had a very brief chat before we started the podcast about him and his qualities, and maybe it's the Wolves system limiting him a little bit, because it is a shame, because before he joined Wolves, there was obviously a player with so much creativity and some great numbers as well.
Yeah, I think I like him, and I've said it a lot. Anyone who's listened and known I do like him. I think he obviously lacks physically, which is understandable. You can see that, and I think actually when we're up against it and we're giving up a lot of possession in games, I don't really think there's a place for Sarabia in our team because I don't think he offers a lot off the ball in terms of defensive work and all that sort of stuff. But when you're dominating the game or you're having possession and you're getting on the ball, he's probably the only player in our squad right now, I think, that actually looks to unlock defences with defence splitting passes.
Yeah.
The ball he played for Bellegarde against Villa, very similar to the ball he played for Strand Larsen on the weekend. And this is what I'm. This is again going back to sort of that Munetsi thing as well. Like I feel like people write players off and then just stick to it, and without any sort of substance. Like, oh, he's shit. Santi Bueno has been famous for it. He had a poor debut against Ipswich in the Carabao Cup last year, and everyone was saying, "Oh, he's shit." And I don't think he's shit. And I think it comes back to Sarabia that he's not shit. I just think he suits certain styles of play in certain games for us. And what we were talking about before we started, Dave, like I actually think his output would be, and people would look at him completely different if he played for a Bournemouth or a Brighton, where actually I think it's a bit more fluid up top and he'd get on the ball a little bit more. And I think he'd suit that sort of team and that sort of style a lot more than that. And I was seeing some of the comments online. He's this and he's that and he's shit. And I'm just like, I understand players have bad games, but don't just say he's shit. Because for me, he was the only one who was actually trying to make a difference in that game, and he plays in between the defence and the midfield, like their defence and midfield, and he was trying to make things happen. And when you're taking more risk, again, this is something that I don't think people take into account when they say, "Oh, he misplaced these passes or did this and it didn't work out." But when you're playing, like, let's call it more high tariff passes or attempts on goal or whatever, obviously you're not gonna be as successful as someone who's just knocking the ball around. And I was going to compare him to Andre there, but almost like Andre, where he will just keep it ticking over and his percentage pass completion will be probably low 90s every game. Sarabia's will probably be in around, I'm not even looking at it, I reckon it'll be around 70 to 75%, but actually the balls he's trying to play are more dangerous balls that are, going to get us goals off the back of it. So I don't buy into that rhetoric and that sort of agenda that he had a bad game at all. I thought he was actually lively. I thought he created a lot. I thought he was so unlucky with his free kick that hit the side netting.
Yeah, it wasn't far away.
He was getting absolutely nowhere near that. It was like another 6 inches left. It's probably, well, could arguably be one of the goals of the season in the whole Premier League. So yeah, look, I don't get the agenda for it all. And actually, let's be honest, he's not going to stick around in the summer. I think he's our highest earner from what we know, or at least up there. Well, maybe couldn't surpass him now with this new deal. Like for the wages we're paying for him and the output we're getting from him from, again, purely from a goals and assists perspective, his numbers need to be better. So even if we wanted to, I don't think we want to keep him on the wages he's on. And for me, that's why he'll walk away in the summer.
Good player, but obviously Lopetegui signing as well, so it'll probably be someone that will be moved on. And his pass completion on Saturday was bang on 75%. So good shout. That was a big shout.
I genuinely did not look at that before anyone thinks I'm just like, it was just a random, looked out there. But,
I mean, talking about individuals, there was some, some great performances. Gully. One of those was Andre. I thought every time I watch him, he just seems to be like immaculate. And I think the stat this weekend was that he's won the most. Most interceptions in the midfield third out of any player in the Premier League so far this season. I just thought Joao Gomes had a little bit of a shaky start, but certainly grew into the game. But Andre was almost flawless throughout. I think I saw him lose the ball maybe once. But other than that, he's just so good. We're very lucky to have a player of that quality.
He was so obviously the best player on the pitch. Like it didn't look. Like it didn't look reasonable for that to be a Premier League game and him stand out so much because you're surrounded by Premier League players. But it was a bit of a joke how much he dominated that midfield. Because he's a joy to watch in that kind of form. And it's taken him a little bit of time to really get into his groove. But now you can see the benefit of having Vitor as his manager, probably speaking the language with him and just getting up to speed with everything. Honestly, just a class act. And destined for better things than Wolves. I think
Yeah.
he's another one of them. Hopefully not too soon, but you can definitely see a move happening.
I'm so glad he's come on though, because it's under Gary O'Neill sort of struggled, obviously thrown under a bus a little bit after that City game at home. But even you saw before the game, obviously we didn't watch it on TV, so I saw it afterwards that he was walking out. I believe it was with his own 2 children, his newborn, and obviously he had the headphones on for his younger lad as well. And I said, "Oh, this is brilliant." Lauren, my girlfriend, said, "I've never heard of him before. Like, why haven't you spoke about him before?" And I said, "Well, he didn't really get the chances under Gary O'Neill. And it's only last sort of Jordan and Joe obviously waxed lyrical about him pretty much since day one, but sort of the last 4 or 6 weeks is where he's really, really stood out for me. And I think, like I say, he really can't. He's adapted brilliantly, well deserved in the Brazilian squad. I hope that sort of fatigue and so on doesn't sort of come back to bite us a little bit over the couple of games after international break. But a top class player. And I think Joao Gomes, still as good as what he was as well. But I think with Andre sort of a new shiny toy almost, that he's going to get a bit more of the attention. But those two have really made that midfield their own. And I thought, when you lose Mario Lemina, who was a big part of that midfield over the last year or two, who was a captain as well, I think those two have done really well to adjust. And probably another couple of players, George, before we move on, Toti Gomes as well. And I was thinking about this earlier on. I think, the Wolves recruitment gets slandered quite a lot. And obviously you have got the Fabio Silvas and Patrick Catrones of this world. But Toti Gomes is, when you think about it, is an unbelievable purchase. Signed from Estoril when he had just a handful of appearances, used the Grasshopper Zurich model. And that's exactly what it was for, to sort of get himself properly into first team men's football. And now he's an established Premier League footballer. There'll be times where people maybe throw question marks over his performances because maybe his body type isn't sort of what a standard Premier League football would be in terms of how what his technique's like and so on. But everything that was thrown at him on Saturday, he dealt with, and he's becoming a real big part of this team alongside Agbadu and even Doc in that back three.
Yeah, I think since he's come back from his injury, I think this is the best he's played in a Wolves shirt.
Oh, for sure. Yeah,
over a period of games, like it looks unbelievable. It gives us that balance on the left-hand side. And I think, actually, I'm not sure. I think Agbadu next to him helps as well, because it gives that little bit of confidence that, we can play a little bit higher and we can get physical and I can get tighter and I know he'll come and cover for me as well, because we've lacked that sort of pace, as we know anyway, for a while. I know Matt often give him like the Rockport man of the match and whatever, but he's a Rolls Royce at the minute. I just don't get where the improvement in him is unbelievable. And I think it was last year the article came out of him, because he was a rugby player, wasn't he, when he was younger, and
so, yeah.
He come into football really late. And like I say, I do think he looks awkward at times on the ball, but has looked awkward on the ball at times. Even on the weekend, he's like stepping out now. He's playing passes. He's taking players on and driving with it into space. I think, like I say, it's an unbelievable pickup from the recruitment team. And he got Portuguese international caps last season, where I just didn't see it. And I know it was Martinez picking up. I just thought he's not. I don't see why you'd put him in that sort of setup. For me, like if he got a call up now, I think he'd be worth every bit of it. I think he's that good. I really do. And again, I think actually because he's been a little bit awkward and a bit suspect at times over his Wolves career, let's say, I think he's one that actually now, when you talk about going into next season, which I hope we can start planning for next season in the next couple of weeks when we're sort of safe. Like he's one of the first one of the first names on the team sheet for me, and it should be a mainstay, especially in a back three, because it gives you that balance and physicality and pace and power. And him and Agbadu, and I think we're all saying, we still haven't seen a lot of the Jigger, and we haven't seen a lot of Mascara playing in that sort of system as well. All of a sudden, we've gone from having sort of Bueno, Dawson, Kilman, who weren't exactly the quickest of centre-halves, let's be honest. So all of a sudden, actually, we could be playing a completely different style of football going into next season with, being able to play high line and press teams like a lot of the better teams in the league do as well, and play a lot higher up the pitch.
I remember sort of in January when we were talking about centre backs, and I agree. It's almost like the polar opposite, where we look quite top heavy in terms of forward and winger numbers, and having no centre backs. So almost the opposite now, where like it's like, well, where's the pace, where's the quality up top? But we're pretty set defensively, especially now. Doc can fill that right centre back role fairly well. But I think what Matt said in January when we were looking at players, he said he wants someone quick, but he wants someone that will attack the ball and brave and physical. And I think that's Toti's got that. Agbadou's definitely got that as well. Like you said, Nasser Giga, we just don't know what to expect, but we've got this real solid front line. And you bring Mosquera back into it, as if he comes back, the player that we sort of hoped we'd see at the start of the season. We've got a real promising back line that's not the oldest either, to be fair. He's still got some years in it. But I agree with Toti. Roberto Martinez does like him, keeps tabs on him. And I think I was just quickly looking at their squad for the upcoming international break isn't out yet. So I would hope that he's in for a shout. I was looking at the centre-backs and stuff from that January squad announcement, and he should get in above a lot of those. But some of them aren't really playing for their clubs either, but that'd be another huge achievement for him. Gully, very quickly as well before we move on, in terms of other individual performances, Agbadou, who we've already mentioned, phenomenal. Jean-Ric Bellegarde, I think he's all of a sudden gone from a player which no one really wanted near the 11 to one of the first names on the team sheet. And I think again on Saturday, got the assist, but in terms of his composure and his ability now on the ball, he looks like a completely different player, so much more confident with his ability on the ball now.
Yeah, I think he always had it. I do think he always had it. I think he's clearly more comfortable playing centrally and deeper than what he was doing. Yeah, he's often out on the touchline, not his game. Playing too high up against a fullback, just not his game either. I mean, quite frustratingly for him, the kind of spaces that Cunha gets into, he clearly looks a lot more comfortable in those as well. And he's never going to win that battle in terms of team selection and stuff. But you could see, without Cunha there, he really came into his own and took that responsibility of trying to make things happen, beat people, create chances, all that sort of stuff. And I actually think he should have done better with that shot he had in the first half where he kind of bent it just wide. I thought that was... He was clearly frustrated with himself afterwards, but that was the kind of situation where he thought, he should be in the target there. And he looks like more capable of scoring goals and creating things. And I think that's something that Vitor is trying to drum into the team. I think now, if you include Munetzi's goal, we've scored more goals from midfield in this half of the season than we had under Gary O'Neill at the start. So there's a clear drive to try and encourage more goals from that part of the pitch, which we need, definitely.
Yeah, no, definitely. And quickly before we move on, some of the stats after that game. Manehti, the first Zimbabwean to score in the Premier League since Benjani back in 2011. He was again an underrated baller, Benjani. You remember his celebration? He used to point at all the people in the crowd. But yeah, Benjani. We've lost just one of our last 8 now against Everton at home. We've won 3, drawn 4. I think the loss was in COVID as well, to be fair. So with a crowd, we've done pretty well at Molyneux. And like I mentioned earlier, Andre won possession in midfield, in the midfield third 11 times against Everton, which is so far, unless it was broken yesterday, which I don't think it was a record in a Premier League match this season. We'll finish off quickly, lads, with some questions. Rich, which is RJ Foster on Twitter. Where does Andre end up, Barcelona or Real Madrid? Jordy, we sort of haven't had that period yet, but in the summer, I have no doubt that there's going to be some big links to him, isn't there?
100%, yeah. And I think anytime he gets linked to someone, I'm probably going to be, praying that he didn't go anywhere. I think Andre can go wherever he wants to go, but I hope we get him for another year. I think we get another season out of him next season, and I think he's gone. And I think it could go for a lot of money as well. So let's just enjoy him while we've got him, is all I'd say on that.
When I first saw him, I had him as a potential Rodri replacement longer term. But they obviously went a little bit early on that with Nico Gonzalez now. And so that move might not be on the cards, but I think he's that good. Like, you could easily go and slot in and see.
Yeah, it's crazy because opposition fans will probably watch or listen to this and think, "What are they on about?" But like I said on Saturday again, I just watch him and what he does, and I just think he's so makes everything look so easy, composure on the ball and so on. He's just a phenomenal footballer, and we're quite lucky to have him at the moment as well. Freezing Wolf makes a pretty good point. It's sort of similar to what we said earlier. Should we be looking at a different, more dynamic formation in attack? and using Jord and Strand Larsen as a plan B off the bench. We don't seem to be playing in a way that suits his qualities. He's currently offering very little, and it's frustrating everyone, including JSL himself. And it sort of goes back to what I say, but Jord, I just don't think there's an out-and-out number 9 there, unless you're using Cunha as that front man again, or even Hwang. But I think Hwang had a positive impact on Saturday, but we had a lot of joy down the wide areas. But when you're coming up against a team like Everton, there was just no presence, and you got no one in the box to worry them as such. So no. I just don't think at the moment. I agree with his points, but I just don't think we've got the personnel to do that at the moment.
Yeah, I think it's a fair question and point to raise. I just don't think we've got a candidate that would go, yeah, we could replace Strand Larsen with that as well. And I think if Strand Larsen goes and scores 2 on the weekend against Southampton, touch wood, he can. We're not having this discussion, so it's just a bit fickle in that sort of sense. But absolutely agree that we've got to find a better way and a better system to get the best out of Strand Larsen, or you move on from him in the summer.
Yeah. No. Ash Burns, is Nuno no longer ours? He's eclipsing what he did at Wolves with Forest. Good. I don't think he is just yet. Obviously, he's in a great position with Forest, but he hasn't. Maybe I'm being a bit Roy Keane here, but he's not done anything yet, has he? Like,
Nice.
What do you think?
Yeah, it's that video with him dancing with Bolly in the changing room.
That was heartbreaking.
It was a bit of a dagger. That was, but I've still got this in the back of my head. I can't see that team as being better than when we had our 2 consecutive 7th place finishes. I can't see them as better than us. I whether it's just rose tinted glasses or whatever, but player for player, I'm just not buying it right now. But you can see as well that the top end of the Premier League just ain't as good as what they were. So I think they've been able to capitalise on that and take points from teams that they probably wouldn't have done before. But look, don't take away from the job that he's done. It's been unbelievable, and the fact he's getting a tune out of that squad. Because they weren't, like, people can change their opinion about it. That weren't a squad at the start of the season. Everyone was thinking, top half's on the cards here. Like, it's just not the case, right?
Bottom 3 they were talking about. A lot of people thought they might go down.
He's just a bit of a special manager. Exactly. Yeah.
I think, and I saw someone mention this about Emery the other day, where he's like a top manager, and I think a lot of people admire him, but he's like, probably because he's not done too well at like PSG and Arsenal, that top end elite clubs probably won't risk that. And I think Nuno's almost a similar. I think he might have one more shot at an elite club. Not that I can see him fitting in, maybe not in the Premier League. I can't see him going to maybe one of the big clubs. But I just think he's one of those managers, because everywhere he's gone, bar Spurs, which just seems to be a little bit of a poison chalice, at Wolves, he did well very well in Saudi Arabia, which I don't think he's spoken about enough. And then come back to Forest, he's just a top coach. Jordan, I think it hurts more that we're struggling, let's say, and Forest, who are a team that Wolves have had a couple of ding dongs with over the last couple of years, but when they're in, got former Wolves players, but then a head coach that some Wolves fans will probably still call God, in the dugouts. It's a little bit upsetting, isn't it?
It is, yeah, and I think you bang on what you said there. I don't think Nuno gets another big gig in England, just because Spurs are almost seen as that sort of stepping stone within the entry into the Big Six, and it's like, because it just failed miserably there. I don't think anyone would touch him in terms of within our country, but I do think he'd get a big move elsewhere. I think it's the same with Ange Postecoglou. People admired him, but thought, I'm not quite sure if this gimmick will work, and he's gone to Spurs, and it just hasn't worked. I don't think he'll get that move either. But yeah, I got back to what Gully says as well. I still look at that Forest team and think, actually, our team of a few years back, I think we'd go and beat them. I don't think they're better than that, but I do think what he has done is set us up. Yeah, he's playing more of a 4 than a 5 now, but he's still basically set up on the same way of transition, pace on the break. Chris Wood's having his best ever season because he's playing within the 18-yard box, not having to do donkey work like he would have done at Burnley. Like, it's just you stay there and put the ball in the back of the net, and you've got Hudson-Odoi and Elanga that are doing that. I think someone that's criminally underrated for Forest is Elliot Anderson as well. I think he's an unbelievable footballer. And he was someone that we were linked with right from when Newcastle were interested in Kilman. And I mean, again, not that we need another centre midfielder, but I'd be really interested to see how he would have fit in at Wolves. Probably nowhere near as well as he has at Forest, to be fair. But he was a player that I'd have liked to have. And they've got a good player, Murillo as well. Murillo's a cracking centre half as well. But yeah, I mean, you look at the fullbacks, and again, Aina's had a good season. But if you said Ola Aina or Nico Williams versus Aitner and Semedo, you're taking Semedo and Aitner. Still now, I'm still taking them too, which might be a bit controversial because I think Aina's been really, really good this year. But that's what I mean. On paper, I still don't think there's loads on paper between their squad and our squad. It's just they're just functioning really, really well and playing to their strengths.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how they end the season, and obviously how they. I have no doubt they'll get Europe in some capacity next year, but we'll wait and see. But lads, it's been a really good podcast. I appreciate it. We've got obviously next week we'll be reacting to hopefully 3 points against Southampton. Gully, thanks for joining us. Hopefully it's the first of many, mate. Where can people find you if they wish?
Yep, at Molyneux Musings on Twitter. So make sure you drop us a follow. And there's a nice playlist of all my content on the YouTube channel under tactical analysis, I think. So be sure to go back and have a look at those.
Yeah, I'll make sure I link that if you are watching on YouTube to check out some of Gully's stuff on the channel. Jord, what about you? Where can people find you if they wish?
Jord7 on Twitter and Instagram.
Perfect. I'm at Dave as a party everywhere, and we're at Talking Wolves everywhere as well. Drop us a follow, like, or subscribe to keep up to date with all the latest Wolves action. If you're watching on Spotify or listening, on Spotify or Apple, leave us a 5-star review. And until next week, guys, look after yourselves, enjoy your week, and we'll catch you on the next one.